Hi, my name is Smilin Observer, and this is the conclusion to Sara and Liz's ordeal. Let's find out what happens. If floppy was the last straw, this was the complete annihilation of the camel's back. By the time I finally got to Liz's house, it was 2 in the morning. I walked up the stairs to her attic apartment and saw that she had left the door open for me. All the lights were out, but I figured she'd just be on the computer, downloading some songs for us to listen to in our insomnia. Liz has the absolute best taste in music. If she ever gets tired of winning millions of awards for acting, I constantly suggest she become a DJ. I hope that she had downloaded some pump-up music for our impending battle with whatever it was, because I was on the warpath. I wanted it dead. Not just dead. I wanted it completely and utterly destroyed, and to dance on its ashes while singing Jesus Loves Me at the top of my lungs. I walked through the door and up the other flight of stairs, pausing briefly at the cross in the doorway. Unlike mine, hers had only fallen at one time. Pretty soon, nothing would be falling. I was pretty excited. I got to the top step and looked to my left, expecting to see her at the computer. Nope. No Liz. I looked to my right towards her bedroom. Nothing. Liz's attic apartment was a pretty small studio-type place, so there wasn't much room to hide. I glanced at the bathroom door. It was open, and no one was in there. Well, this is odd, I thought to myself, and grabbed my cell phone to call her and see where she is. I tried not to let the sinking feeling creep into my stomach. There is a perfectly logical explanation of this. I kept telling myself that over and over again. I made one more visual sweep of the room while I waited for Liz to pick up. Not only was there nothing in the apartment, but she also didn't pick up. It went to voicemail. Liz, I'm at your place. Where are you? Call me. I took a deep breath and tried to keep myself calm. She probably went out with some of the other castmates or something. No big deal. I tried to put on my detective's hat. I went over to her computer to see if she had been talking to anyone about plans. As the screen buzzed to life, I saw an open chat window. Gotta love AIM. Torn between prying and worrying about where Liz was, I decided to read just what was on the window and not to scroll through the whole conversation. Liz, were you sure? Liz, okay, how do I get there? Liz, I can do that, but it's going to take me a while just walking. Is it right or left after Main Street? Okay, I can't wait to see you. I love you. Sure, I can bring that. Love you. Can't wait to see you. For a second, I was relieved that she was just going to a friend's house or something in town. But then I realized that there were absolutely no replies from another person chatting with her. Nothing. I looked at the top of the chat window to see who she was talking to, and it said blank message. What? I scrolled up through the conversation. Forget privacy at this point. And it was all Liz and no one else. It was like she was having a full-on conversation with someone, but I couldn't see any replies. I kept reading. I am so sorry for everything. I love you so much. How is this happening? I get that part of it, but how? Like, how does this work? Oh, I can kind of see that, I guess. What really happened with the Ouija board? I didn't think so. It seemed like it, but it didn't at the time. I can't believe I get to talk to you. And so on. From what I could gather, Liz thought she was talking to Will, and Will was responding in a way only she could see. I was scared. I scrolled back down to the bottom to see if I could figure out where she was supposed to meet him, aside from the Main Street comment. I had absolutely nothing to go on. Actually, the Main Street comment was unbelievably not helpful either, because there were quite a few intersections on Main, and she could have met any of them. I found myself back at square one and incredibly scared. I thought about calling Friar Bob to come back and at least help me look for her, but decided against it for some reason. I honestly didn't think he could help. It had developed beyond his capability to help. I racked my brain for another friend or someone that could help me that would either A, believe me, or B, just not ask any questions. But then I had a sudden burst of brilliance. I clicked on the settings button to figure out how to add timestamps to the IM chat window. Score. She had sent last message only 15 minutes ago. On foot, she couldn't have gotten that far. Main Street was at least a 10-minute walk from her place. There was a good chance I'd see her on Main Street or be able to figure out which intersection she turned down. I raced back down the stairs and got into my car. I turned the key. Nothing. I turned it again. Nothing. You've got to be kidding me. I don't do cars. I don't understand cars. If it doesn't work when I put the key in it, I have no idea how to fix it. I usually cry when that happens, and then yell at AAA to come and get me. I sat there in the driver's seat defeated. For some reason, I glanced up and saw Will sitting in the back seat through the rearview window. I turned around but didn't see him. I turned back to the front and looked in the mirror. He was back. He smiled at me with a sad smile. Do you know anything about cars? I asked, not expecting to get a sort of answer. He motioned for me to try again. I did, and the engine turned over. We were in business. Do you know where Liz is? I asked. He just pointed straight down the road. I started driving. I reached Main Street, and he motioned me to turn left. I did. I kept looking in vain for Liz on the side of the road. She couldn't have gotten far. I looked back at Will, who was pointing to the right. I turned onto a side street and kept going at a snail's pace, trying to catch a glimpse of Liz. The houses started to get further and further apart. I remember noticing how inky black the sky was. It was creepy, but I was determined to find Liz. Pretty soon, I had driven 3 very slow miles on the side road. There was no way Liz could have gotten this far on foot in that time frame. I glanced back at Will, but he wasn't sitting there anymore. I looked around and I didn't recognize anything. The trouble with going to college in a town in the middle of Bumford to Egypt is that you take a wrong turn and you're stuck in the middle of nowhere. That's where I was. Up ahead in the distance I saw a house. I decided I'd go up to the house and turn around. As I approached, I saw a light in the downstairs window. But the house looked like it had been abandoned for years. Great, I thought. Yet another abandoned house. Super. I slowed down as I tried to turn in the circular driveway. When I saw a flash of a person in white to my left, near the house, I strained my eyes. It was Liz. I threw my car in park so fast that the transmission or whatever handles the gears in cars said, I threw the car in park so fast that the transmission or whatever handles the gears in cars, like I said, I know how to pump gas and put windshield wiper fluid in. That's the extent of my car knowledge. Made a whining noise. I flew out of the car and tried to make my way through the weeds and overgrowth of the place. I was stopped in my tracks by an overgrown, rusty, wrought iron fence. I hadn't seen it in the dark. Great. An abandoned house and tetanus. Oh, and a missing best friend. Best night ever. I followed the fence until I finally found an opening about 20 feet or so down the yard. I had lost sight of Liz. I contemplated calling out for her, but something told me not to make my presence known. I doubled back on the other side of the fence and went to the last spot I saw Liz. I didn't see her. I tried whispering Liz's name, but it was like no sound could travel in the thick darkness surrounding me. I crouched there silently, wishing I had angled the car's headlights toward the house so I could see. There was some movement to my right. My head snapped over and saw Will standing there, pointing to the back side of the house. He almost looked angelic, lit up by the tiniest bit of light coming in from the moon. Oh, a full moon. My luck was freaking awesome. I kept low as I crept through the weeds toward the back of the house. The house was huge, like someone had put on multiple editions in various times throughout the last century. I'm sure in its heyday, it would have been a beautiful house. But all of the weeds and overgrowth, though, it just looked creepy. As I rounded the corner, I saw Liz standing near the back door of the house. She wasn't moving at all, just standing there. Liz, I called out, trying still to be quiet. She didn't respond. I tried again. Nothing. I started to move closer and was nearly knocked over by one of the most powerful and horrific flashes I had yet gotten through this whole deal. Someone asked me if I could feel the flashes along with seeing them. Yes, most of the times I could feel something too. But it was never that severe. My head screamed in agony as flash after flash assaulted me. I tried to keep my eyes focused on Liz. Tried to find the strength to call out to her, but my whole body was being held down by something. I couldn't see. In my agony, I saw her take a step toward the door. Again, I tried to call out to her. Something, anything. Nothing would work. I tried to look around for Will, but I couldn't see anything but the flash and about 15 glowing eyes in the bushes around me. It scared the snot out of me, to be honest. I had never seen something like that before. Finally, my foot found some leverage on the ground to somehow push me into a kneeling position. I finally thought I would be able to stand up and get over to Liz. I saw her take another step, and I put all my energy into my foot to try to propel me forward. My foot felt like it had broken through something, and I fell back down. Whatever I had gained traction on had basically cracked under my foot. It was only a few seconds later when I heard the sound of bees. Not the bees again. Suddenly my body was on fire. It felt like I was being stung by a million bees. I couldn't scream. I couldn't move. I was face down in the weeds with a million bees tearing my body with their stingers. I couldn't see any bees, however, though I couldn't see much from my vantage point with my cheek on the ground. In my head, I debated whether or not to just give up. I wanted to, believe me. But then all of a sudden, Will was there. He was lifting me off the ground. Where his hands were touching me, there were no bees. I tried to scream out Liz's name. This time, a semblance of sound came from my throat. I saw her turn towards me, confused. Liz, I was about to croak out, help. She started to rush over to me. As soon as she got within 2 feet of me, Will completely vanished. What in the world? What happened? Where am I? Are you okay? The stinging has started to subside, and the flashes weren't as severe. I didn't answer her. Instead, I just grabbed her and led her to the break in the gate. No. Where are we going? I think I figured it out, she said, but I didn't really listen. I just kept going. Sara, stop, she screamed. I didn't pay any attention to her. I just wanted to get out of there. She stopped dead in her tracks. Seriously, Sara, stop. I need you to listen to me. No, we've got to get out of here, Liz. Please, do you trust me? Yeah, of course, but we need to go now. We finally made it back to the car. I gunned it back towards town. Once we had hit civilization again, I pulled off to the side and looked at Liz. She looked extremely focused, extremely confused. Where are we? What just happened? Turns out Liz had prayed to talk to Will to see if he could help us figure out what was going on. She had yet to see him as I had, and wanted to see him for herself, to kind of prove that he was who he said he was. She was praying Will. As she was praying, Will IM'd her, and they chatted for quite a while online. It was just like the Ouija board. Sara, she said. Towards the end of the conversation, Will asked her to meet him. However, the place Will asked her to meet him was not the same place that she ended up. Sarah, I honestly don't remember walking that way. I remember getting onto Main Street and passing some drunk guy being pulled over by the cops because he was weaving his bicycle back and forth. I was supposed to meet him in the park, not 3 miles down the road. I started asking her some more questions. It turned out she was there, but wasn't really there. She saw a house, but it definitely didn't look like the same house I saw. Something was definitely messing with her. I explained the abridged version of what had happened with Friar Bob and how we thought it was coming after her. Poor Liz looked terrified. I would too. I didn't want to tell her about how I almost killed myself. Let's keep her faith restored for now. We got back to her apartment around 4 and went straight to bed. Before we both fell asleep, I use that term loosely because who in their right minds would sleep after something like that? I said I had a plan and we could talk about it on the way to my mom's house for my sister's graduation party. We had plans to go and party, then stay the night at my mom's house. Hopefully it would be a respite for us. We woke up that morning and Liz ran to the coffee shop to get us coffee. I didn't really want to set foot in that place ever again. When she got back, I hopped into the car and we started driving. The 1.5 hours down to my mom's house, we started discussing our game plan. Something connects me to Will and to whatever this is, I said. I don't know if he's your guardian angel, if he's just a regular ghost looking out for us, or what. If there's definitely a connection there, he is the only one that has been able to stop things. He was the one who pointed me toward that house you were at last night. If we can get him to talk, we can maybe get some answers. I didn't really want to think of the alternative. That Will was really sent by it to keep our spirits up. I mean, something posing as Will had convinced Liz to go to that random house in the middle of nowhere. Could the Will I've been seeing just been a tactic to screw with me? Didn't really have any options though. I had to believe he was there to help, not hurt us, and that it knew about him and tried to use him against us. I hoped I would know the difference if the time came. We started discussing ways to get Will to talk to us. Ouija board was definitely out. Spirit writing was definitely out. I am messages were out. We were kind of at a dead end. I didn't want to try to summon him for fear that I wouldn't be able to control who came through. We were quiet for the moment. There's always his phone, Liz said softly. I was confused until she reminded me about the original Ouija board night that way back when. I was hesitant. Was that a stupid idea? The dispute over whether or not it was a stupid idea lasted until we pulled into my mom's driveway. We just couldn't really weigh the pros and cons of the idea. It was hard to do that when you don't know the pros and cons. The party was a fun distraction for the most part. All of the adults got super drunk, and the karaoke machine may or may not have come out. Liz, as usual, put them all to shame when she sang someone to watch over me. How fitting. The last drunk guest grabbed the cab around 2 a.m. and Liz and I went up to my room. I wanted to talk strategy some more, but I was a bit more buzzed, and so was Liz. I figured talking about our spiritual fates at 2 a.m. while drunk was not the best idea in the world. I grabbed some blankets and got comfy on the ground next to Liz on the bed. We started talking about stupid drunk stuff and were laughing pretty hard when I felt the floor under me start to vibrate every couple of seconds. Did you feel that? I asked Liz. Liz asked, what was I talking about? I tried to dismiss it. It continued, however, and started to get more and more strong. Are you sure you don't feel that? I asked. Before Liz could answer, the door to my room was thrown open. We both screamed and I nearly dove into the bed with Liz out of pure shock. I realized I had my eyes clenched shut and willed myself to open them. There was nothing at the door. What was going on? It took me a few seconds, but I finally made myself get up and go to shut the door. As soon as I turned back around, it flew open again. This time we didn't scream. I may have sworn a blue streak, but I didn't scream. Seriously? This had followed me 100 miles? Liz was right behind me as we crept into the hallway. I could hear her. My stepdad drunkenly snoring in his room. My sister's door was shut, but the light was on. We went and tapped on the door. She answered and asked if we had heard anything. She answered, and we had asked her if she had heard anything. She hadn't, and not so nicely told us to leave her alone. My sister wasn't the most pleasant high school student. We turned to my room and both sat on the bed. We started bouncing ideas off each other as to what we could do. Suddenly it hit me. When stuff gets really bad, Will shows up. He shows up and he's able to help or to stop whatever is going on. It's obviously followed us here. So if we can get it bad, maybe I will see Will and get him to talk. We kind of agreed that while a completely stupid idea, it was the only one that we could come up with. Liz insisted on praying before we started. I went along with it. I then started provoking. Forget you and the horse you rode in on. I yelled as loud as I dared not to wake up my drunk parents. We giggled and I tried to get more serious. Seriously, you're pathetic. Preying on two girls like this. I mean, aren't there more important people in the world you could gain something by bothering them? Oh, that's right. You can't because you're a... I'm not going to say what she said. You're a stupid cat. I tried to come up with some of the meanest stuff I could think of. As you can see, I am not a really mean person. I just use as many cliches that I could think of. Looking back, It was almost laughable. I kept going though. I was getting angrier and angrier. I could feel the edge of a flash, and hope started to soar through my heart. I think I had pissed it off. I think it's going to get bad. Will's going to have to come and save us again. I could see Liz out of the corner of my eye, ready to help in any way she could. I felt bad for her. Things were a lot better at her apartment. She had never really saw how bad it could get. I probably should have warned her a bit better. The door ripped open and then slammed shut. My bedroom window opened and a gust of wind came in. It was freezing cold, even though it was June. I could hear Liz muttering the Our Father under her breath. Her eyes were wide in fear. I kept trying to piss it off. Jesus loves you. Yes, he does. We both heard a creak of my bed. We looked over, and I heard Liz gasp. There on the edge of the bed was an imprint, as if someone had sat down on the edge of the bed. As a kid, that had been one of my biggest fears in life. I had heard of a ghost story where a kid was in bed and felt his bed sag, as if someone was sitting there, scared the snot out of me. My other fear as a kid was looking in the mirror and seeing someone behind me. I didn't want to look in the large mirror over by my dresser. I had a feeling I'd see something I didn't want to see. I turned the opposite direction in the mirror and happened to glance at the television. Like an idiot, I hadn't turned on my TV, and in the darkness, reflective screen, I saw someone sitting on my bed that definitely wasn't there. The harder I looked, the more details I could see. It looked like the same guy from Liz's dream. It was coming full circle, or so it seemed. I could hear my heart beat, thump faster and faster in my ears. It kept getting louder and louder until my ears were full of the rush of blood, and I couldn't hear much of anything. Then all of a sudden, the roar of blood was replaced with the screams I had heard when Fire Bob was at my apartment blessing me. The flash hit me with all the force in the world. It seemed my body was on fire. I couldn't hear anything. I tried to keep my focus, but it was extremely hard. I felt myself drop to the ground. Somewhere in my semi-consciousness, I could feel Liz next to me trying to snap me out of it. I couldn't focus on her at all. I tried to look around to see if I could see Will, but he was nowhere in the room. I felt myself roughly thrown into my back. I felt my arms go out to either side and seemed to be stuck to the floor. My legs went straight out, and the same feeling of being pulled into my floor. My vision seemed to flicker in between my actual room and the flashes like on the TV set with a bad signal. It had never been this severe before. 1 second I could see the terror in Liz's eyes, and the next I could see her, hung by her neck, just like a Will, bleeding through her eyes. What happens next, I do not remember to this day. All I can remember are all of the horrific things that slammed through my head. I vaguely remember Liz grabbing me and pulling me down to the floor, screaming at me to look at her and pray. But that's about it. The only thing I do remember is the moment I felt everything go quiet. And that, folks, is a story for Liz to tell you. The story of how we made it go quiet. She is currently working on it, and we will update it when she is done. Everything that I'm going to read to you next is from Liz's perspective. So this is Liz. I feel like an introduction is kind of necessary and polite. I have been reading all of the Ouija board Reddits, helped remember stories from that time period in our lives, and remembered a lot of crappy stuff that I had purposely blocked. We didn't talk a lot about this stuff until recently because we were afraid that it would bring it back into force. So it faded into the echelons of my brain. That's why this took me so long to write. I had no one to help me remember this, and this is definitely the one I blocked the most. Now, I just look back and think, wow, I can't believe we lived through this. This is some crazy stuff. Not tooting our, mostly Sarah's horns, but it's the truth. We made it through. I grew up super Lutheran. My parents were religious studies majors that met in college, and my parents worked in the church my entire life. Ouija boards were just not on my radar until I met Sarah. When we decided to do it, I didn't think it would work. I wish it hadn't. Though, through all the stuff we went through, it did strengthen my belief that there is good and evil out there, and that good always wins when you want it to. And this is the story of our win. I'll start where Sarah left off. She was writhing on the floor, but her limbs were pretty stiff. That's not a good description, but it was the weirdest thing I'd ever seen. I tried not to be scared, because I knew she needed me. When you see your best friend basically fighting for her soul on the ground in a mock crucifix-like positioning, you sober up pretty quickly, believe me. Those beers and shots disappeared. I didn't know what to do. I knelt down beside her and tried to shake her awake. As soon as I touched her arm, her head snapped over to me and her eyes went black. Honest to God, they were black as night. She had this creepy smile on her face, similar to the time in my apartment with the water in the hole. The power of Christ compels you thing. But this time it was scarier, if that's even possible. Imagine a serial killer, serial rapist, terrorist, a sadist rolled into one, sitting on an electric chair waiting to die, and being asked if they had any last words. Now imagine them turning to the one victim who got away, the one who brought them to justice and saying, "See you soon." That's with a creepy smile right before they pulled the switch. That's kind of what it looked like. It wasn't Sarah. I had no idea who it was, but I knew it wasn't Sarah. I admit, I recoiled a bit. Wouldn't you? But then I got my stuff together. How dare this thing think it had the right to do this? Sarah was a great person, and no one messes with my best friend forever. Especially because it wanted to get to me. You want me? Then come at me. If this is our fight, fight me, not her. I grabbed Sara. I use her name loosely here. I grabbed her arm and started praying. I am not well versed in demon fighting. As religious as I may be, our primary focus is learning about God and stuff, not fighting demons. Praying is all I had in my arsenal until I could gauge the situation. I shut my eyes so I didn't have to see the creepy smile and black eyes again and just kept praying. Any louder I think of. Praying is all I had in my arsenal until I could gauge the situation. I shut my eyes so I didn't have to see the creepy smile and the black eyes again and just kept praying. Any prayer I could think of. I just kept saying it over and over and over. Nothing was going to stop me. At least I thought nothing would stop me. Over the sound of my voice and Sara's growling, best way to describe it, I heard a third voice in some language I recognized but didn't understand. I was a bit surprised, to say the least. I briefly opened my eyes and saw Sara's mouth moving with the words I was hearing. So to recap, she was not only making these groaning noises, but on top of it, was speaking in some language. What in the world? Literally. I noticed that she was about 3 or 4 inches off the ground. Off the freaking ground, people. There aren't 10 girls around her with fingers stuck under her. She was levitating right there in front of me. I pushed her down and tried to continue to pray as forcefully and confidently as I could. I could feel her again go cold and hot, back and forth under my hand. Again, weirdest feeling ever. I caught a few words of what Sara was saying and recognized the language as some sort of old Aramaic that I had heard my dad speak a few times when he was doing his religious study projects. But I still had no idea what was being said. I didn't think to brush up on my Aramaic before coming to Sara's sister's grad party. I kept praying. What else was I going to do? I had to buy time so I could figure out a plan. I wish I could see Will like Sara for a lot of reasons, but mostly because I thought he could help me figure out what to do. I wasn't really jealous per se. I didn't want to see the crap Sara saw or experience all the stuff, but I did want to see Will like she did. That's when an idea hit me. If I could get a small bit of Sara back from wherever she was and could get her to see Will, maybe she could tell me what to do. I noticed Sara had started levitating again. This time I had to put my body weight on her to get her back down. I had to go on my knees and push her down to the ground. When I got her there, I stared point blank into the black eyes and creepy smile. I smiled back. I smiled like I would smile at Sara when she would be upset. I made myself stare and smile while I quoted the most comforting and reassuring scripture I could think of. Intermixed, I started telling funny stories of our escapades together. Pat Benatar, Walmart, and a lot more she didn't mention here. That's the best thing about our friendship. We had it really good and we had it really bad. When it was good, it was really good, and the best times of my life. When it was bad, well, you know how bad it was. I kind of saw it like I was talking to a friend in a coma. Maybe something I would say, maybe something I would say would wake her up. I kept praying and quoting scripture and just plain talking to Sarah. The smile started to crack. Yes, I kept at it. Her hair started to contort. Her face started to contort in anger. I just kept staring at her eyes and even brushed some of her hair out of her face so I could see her eyes better. Sarah recoiled at my touch. Okay, something was working. I kept at it. Soon I realized that her eyes were just a really dark poop brown, not black. I'd take poop brown over black any day. The Aramaic stopped. She was still groaning, but at least she wasn't speaking that demonic language. I kept at it. I saw her eyes go wild and fear filled them. Yeah, she was terrified, but she was back. She started hyperventilating, and her eyes were shifting all over the room. I didn't think she could move, but I tried to be as calming as I could. I don't really remember what I said, but it was something reassuring, I'm sure. I just had to get her to calm down enough to listen. She kept looking at something in the corner. I looked back, but I didn't see anything. I kept talking to her and asking her if she could see well. It was like it was going through one ear and out the other. I shook her again to get her attention. As soon as I saw her eyes focus on me briefly, I kept asking about Will. It was starting to get frustrating, but I didn't want to scare her by getting angry. I kept at it, and I think grabbed her face to force her to look at me. Okay, now this part is Sarah talking. I just wanted to interject here. I do remember this vaguely. I felt Liz pulling me down and remember looking at her and being really surprised at how calm she looked. The flashes had completely overtaken me, but now I could kind of see my room again. Nonetheless, there was that guy from Liz's dream in the corner, or at least it looked kind of like him. He had the same face, but his body was totally distorted. It was terrifying. It also looked like there was some sort of window behind him, but in my room there was no window in that corner. Outside of the window was hell personified. I won't say what it was, the hell, but it was what I would perceive to be hell. It scared me so much. I tried really hard to focus on Liz, but it was so hard. One, I couldn't move, and that was terrifying. I could kind of tilt my head and move my eyes, but that's it. I was afraid that the guy would come over at any moment and I wouldn't be able to run. Two, my whole body felt like it was burning from the inside. And three, I could hear so many screams and terrifying sounds in my head that I couldn't really react to. It felt like I could just shake my head. I felt like if I could just shake my head, the screams would go away, but I couldn't do that. Terrifying. Number 4, it felt like I was being pulled into the floor and into the air by really cold hands. I just wanted to shake them off. I wanted to get away. but I couldn't. I wanted to focus on Liz, but so much was going on that I couldn't. I started to get angry because I was like, what in the world? I'm trying to move and I need to focus on that. Not on your Bible passages, crazy lady. No, I can't see Will. I can't move. That's more important, don't you think? But every time I felt myself get angry, the guy in the corner would move closer. When I saw that she could focus on me for more than 3 seconds, I asked her in my most calm voice if she could see Will. She shook her head slightly. I asked her, begged her to try. I just needed to talk to Will. She looked a few more times in the direction of the corner and kept looking too. I kept looking too. I swear I saw something, but I have no idea what it was. It was only a flash. Maybe I kept my head turned so long. I don't know. But when I looked back at Sara, her eyes were wide with fear and turning black again. I started with the Our Father and I kept at it. No way was she going to go back to wherever she was. Not if I could help it. All of a sudden, the TV turned on to some fuzzy station. I guess it scared me. Well, I know it scared me. It broke my concentration. And when I looked back at Sara, her eyes were black again, and the creepy smile was black. I tried to smile back, but whatever it was, started talking. This time in English, or at least I think it was English. I could understand it, but who knows? We could have been conversing in ancient Greek for all I know. The words coming from my best friend's mouth were the lowest of low. All of my deepest, darkest insecurities were spewing out. Anything that I had once doubted about myself was out in the open with a creepy smile and laughter to boot. I tried not to listen, but how can you not? It's not like I haven't heard it all before in my head when I've been sad, but it's different to hear it coming from the body of your best friend. It ran the gamut from the generic, you look fat in that outfit, to more personal stuff. I'm not going into it here, but the next time you think something self-deprecating about yourself, imagine your best friend saying it to you with a smile. It sucks. I'll admit, I started to cry. I don't think you'd blame me. But to my credit, I got over it a lot more quickly than I thought I could. I stopped listening and just got pissed. She had risen off the ground again, so I tried to push her down. It was harder this time, but I managed. I prayed some more and then just said screw it and started talking to it directly. To my surprise, to my horror, to my disgust, it started responding. I'm not going to even try to remember the conversation, but it was pretty screwed up. It was like a test. It was never explicitly said that it was a test, but I had this overwhelming knowledge that if I had said the wrong thing, if I wasn't 5 steps ahead of it, that I would lose Sara, and that was not happening. Period. We bickered back and forth quite a bit, and I must have said something to piss it off because I could see the smile falter and a scream that sounded remarkably like Sara's coming from somewhere in her body. It wasn't really through her mouth, but it was from the general direction of her body. Sorry, I can't adequately explain it. I took that as my in to start praying again and talking directly to Sarah. Her eyes started getting brown again. Finally, I was tired, but I kept going. The smile faded completely, and Sarah's wide-eyed, fearful grimace replaced it. She kept looking at the corner again. This time I know I grabbed her face and stopped her from looking that way. I tried to be calm, but firm, and tell her she had to see Will. I could tell she couldn't see him. So I tried to change tactics. I'm not a liar, and especially not a liar to Sarah. But I thought if there was ever the time for this to work, if there ever was the time for it, this would be it. I told her that I had summoned Will and that he was standing behind me. Can't you see him behind me? I kept asking. He's right there. He wasn't. Or at least I didn't know if he was, but something just told me to say that. I saw her eyes connect with something behind me. Then they go back to the corner. I grabbed her face again and tried to make her focus. Did you see Will? She nodded. Thank goodness. I asked him what I should do. It went back and forth a lot. Her staring at him and then breaking her gaze and trying to look into the corner. I kept making her focus on Will behind me and started asking questions. Questions that would really only require yes and no answers. 1 blank yes, 2 blanks no. Stuff like, does praying help? Should I make it mad? Should I get the Bible? Stuff like that. There was a lot of other stuff too. This honestly took 3 to 4 hours because I'd keep losing her as soon as we got to the good questions and have to start all over. Finally, I kind of understood what needed to happen. I still don't understand it to this day. I really don't. I wish I had, because when I could help others, but I don't. What I gathered from Will was that I had to basically meditate and pray that he would do the rest. That seems simple, just writing it out, but imagine getting that from yes or no answers while the room temperature fluctuated and the TV turned on and off and your best friend levitated. It wasn't easy, so I tried. I had never meditated before. I just tried to wipe my mind clear and focus on God and on the prayers coming out of my mouth. I won't get all religious on you. That's not what this is here for. You wanted to know the ending, and the ending just happens to be a religious connotation for me. I cleared my head and kept praying, and I had my hand on Sarah's shoulder so she wouldn't float away again. All of a sudden, I felt this overwhelming calm sensation coming to me, and my hands seemed to glow and buzz. I felt the buzz go through my hands into Sarah's shoulders. Her eyes burst open and she stared at me with this confused look. If she could have tilted her head in confusion, she would have. As my hands tingled, I could feel a burning sensation come back through. It was like one of my hands tingled toward Sarah, and the other side burned, coming back to me. I started seeing what Sarah was called flashes in my head. I got pretty scared, but I kept praying. I almost stopped. It almost stopped me, but I didn't. I didn't know how I didn't. The only way I can describe it is that something more than myself made me continue to pray. This went on for a few more minutes until the burning seemed to let up a bit and the tingling increased. In whatever circuit I had created, most of the bad fire stuff was gone, but it was in my head. The flashes got worse and worse. It's strange because I know I was saying stuff to Sarah, but I had no idea what I was saying. I could consciously feel my mouth moving and sound coming out, but I wasn't controlling it. At first I was scared that I was now possessed, but realized the speaking was not a bad thing. The flashes were, but whatever was coming out of my mouth was something that was good. The words coming out of Liz's mouth were not hers. She had a different cadence to her voice, and she said things that she normally wouldn't say, if that makes sense. All of a sudden, the flashes kind of exploded in my head. I could feel my body fall backwards, and as hard as I tried, I couldn't sit back up. I was terrified. Was I possessed now? But when I saw Will, I only saw him briefly. But he put his hands on my shoulders just like I did Sarah's. And when I felt the flashes leave, I wish there were better words to explain this. As soon as the flashes were gone, so was Will. I couldn't see him anymore. I looked over and Sarah was there, curled up on the floor, sobbing. But I could tell it was a good sob, not a bad sob. I went and joined her. We just held each other there and sobbed. Over the sobs, I heard Liz say, "It's quiet. Liz, it's quiet." We sat there for a very long time. We cried out years' worth of pain and suffering, terror and fright. We cried until we couldn't cry anymore. We watched the sun rise. It was beautiful. And then we made mimosas. We did it. It was over. And that is our story. At first I was mad at Sarah for telling the story because I was afraid to give the demon any power or credit for our misery. But I realized telling this could potentially help people and figured that this is how we could spin this to make it a positive thing. So for God's sake, don't screw with the Ouija board. So that's it. Some residual stuff lingered after this big fight, but nothing we couldn't handle. It seems to be getting a bit more frequent as of late. But after talking with Liz, I think it's just because we told our story and it's pissed. If anything big happens, I will let you know. Thanks so much for reading and all of your feedback. So, there you have it. The conclusion of Sarah and Liz's ordeal with this demonic entity that plagued their lives. And just like Liz said, don't mess with the Ouija board. Nothing good can come of it. Okay, so you may play with one and nothing happens. But what about that time when something does happen? The only good stories I've heard come from Ouija board stories was when nothing happened. But every time I've read of something actually happening, it was always, always bad. Don't play with them. This is Smilin Observer, and I'm out.